Welcome back. Doug Robbie, Tentative Meeting IL. You should be listening to the February 26th, 2025 episode right now. Pre recorded. So it's not live like the upper right hand graphic says. It's not live, but it should be airing at 6:45 a.m. Doing this because, as mentioned in the first on Monday's episode, um, preparing for Mardi Gras this week and so forth, and spending these 4 days just kind of getting quiet before the Lord best we can, putting that time aside, preparing our heart and so forth to do what He needs to do, do through us what He needs to do, preparing our heart to be that way. So, figured this week was a good week to do what we're doing right now. I've been thinking about this for a while. Um, about giving my testimony, making a kind of a record of it, if you will, knowing what's made me who I am, what's making me, excuse me, um, sorry, all of a sudden I have a weird tickle, so let me mute for a moment here. I think I got it. Thank you. Sorry about that. But again, we've been talking about the time and process of ministry and so forth, and my encounter with God, and how He's encountered me to make me what you see, and going from there. So we finished off with when I had the infilling of the Holy Spirit and beginning to see the manifestation of the power of God in my life and the gifts of the Spirit in operation, and knowing how He was using me and so forth. Learning how to minister, learning how to function in the grace and the presence of God, the anointing of God, to see what that looks like. So, but let's take it into the next page and a little bit more of some up and down moments, really. Um, and we all have those up and down moments, right? If you don't, get ready, they're coming. Or if you haven't, get ready, they're coming. Because we all have times in our lives where they're going to be less than perfect, less than ideal, right? The old adage, we all want to live on the mountaintop. Yeah, absolutely. But trees don't grow up there. Trees grow in the valley. The rain always makes it down the valley. That's why there's grass and stuff down there, right? So I heard somebody once say, it was on a Gaither video. It's sunny. If the mountain was smooth, you couldn't climb it. A lot of wisdom in that statement. Think just give it some thought. If there's no adversity, we just got done talking about this. If there's no adversity, there's no opportunity to become stronger. There's no opportunity to harden up where you need to be hardened, and to soften up where we need to be softened, and to become more sensitive to them, right? Um, so that brings us into where we are now. So this is in the time span of 1999 to the year 2002. And so again, I was at the church was named New Hope at the time in Roothouse. Um, and again, it was an awesome church. Um, so many very fond memories of things I saw, and the way God used me, and the way God used others in my life, and so forth. I was gonna had it written down on the last page. I'm gonna go ahead and bring it up now. It was there that I always wanted to go to the Brownsville revival. Did not make it. I did, however, make it to the Toronto renewal, the outpouring up there. And they were different. Even though I didn't make it to Brownsville, I knew they were still different. Um, and so many people say the Browns are the Toronto blessing is what they called it. Dropped a blessing. Well, it wasn't a move of God. No, I can assure you, it was a move of God. I was there. I was there for about 2 to 3 days. Definitely, I don't remember how many meetings, but there was a an awesome presence of the Lord there. I had an awesome encounter with Him there, and I was born again. I know Him when I see Him. He was there. Now, whether or not you agreed with that or not, I mean, that's up to you. I mean, that's between you and God. But I'm telling you, as my testimony, that what was going on there was right. It was God. Um, as a whole, there are always going to be fruits, flakes, and nuts. It's getting later in the night. I'm having a problem speaking here. Fruits, flakes, and nuts. Yes, absolutely. There's always going to be some. In every genuine move of God, there's always going to be some, right? Um, you can't judge every move of God by everyone who comes in and who doesn't yield to this presence of God. You can't do that. Judge the move of God by the fruit that is coming out of it that is of God. Our lives being changed, our lives being touched, and that's what that was about. So, again, staying on task with what we're doing here. I'm not here to preach on moves of God or anything like that right now. Uh, but between the years 1999 to 2002, um, there was there was a significant change in the church there, to the fact that they even changed the name of the church, which it is what it is. And of course, with that, from that, I should say the church name changed from a change in the leadership. And again, as I mentioned before, I'm going to keep some things benign because they just don't need to be shared. They're personal, they're private, and it doesn't necessarily it doesn't help anything by bashing people, and I won't do that. That's just not right. I wouldn't want to be bashed. I'm not going to bash someone else. Everybody has to work out their salvation with fear and trembling, just like I do. Um, but there were some errors made. And I'll say this way: there were errors made on my side. Um, I was I was hungry to get into the ministry, and honestly, I was to a point something I had to repent of, and I did. Healed up that. I would do anything I could to do that, and and that being said, that caused some issues to come up across the board. They were addressed. They were correctly remedied, and things moved forward. Um, there during that time, um, met my now wife, Barbara, Barb for short, and we got married. Actually, got married in June of 2002. Shortly after that, during that time, we felt led as like the church we met in, the church I knew, it wasn't the same, and that was fine. It's fine. It's called seasons, right? And sometimes seasons can be painful. Sometimes they're wonderful, even as the seasons change, right? But this particular thing here is just the way the the church was going and so forth. Again, it was growing, but we just didn't necessarily feel a part of that. And again, that's fine. There's no fault, there's no blame, there's no anything. One good positive thing of that time is my wife and I, we came up with a phrase at that time. We inherited it, drove a little bitty car called the clown car, and we'd be in Greenfield where she lived with her mom and her grandma, and we'd be taking people to church, and people would say, "Can I come? You going to church? You want to go to church? Can I go with you?" And we just adopted the phrase, "There's always room for one more. Always room for one more. We'll find the room." And we most likely put more people in the car than we should have. There was a night I remember getting out of the car. It was a little four-speed it was a 1989 Ford Festiva. Little bitty thing. Great gas mileage. Destroyed the car. There was a night I got out of the car and pulled into the parking lot, and we're getting out of the car, getting ready to come into church. And three people, I should say myself, my wife, my now wife, and two people in the back of the car had to get out before you even saw the car start to come back up in the shocks. That's how. And we had more people than we probably should have safely, but nobody died, nobody was hurt. God bless it. God's favor was on it. God's protection was on it. Thank you, Jesus. But that was where I really did. It's like there's always room for one more. Find the space. I'll take one less bag or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just find a spot. But at that point, as we said, church has changed, and again, it was time for us to move on. We ended up finding jobs in Springfield, both of us, which of course caused us to find a house in Springfield. So it didn't make sense to be driving back and forth to Springfield every morning for work, right? I don't care how good a gas mileage you get, there comes a time. And so we ended up, our life is now in Springfield. And it is to this day. It's never stopped from that point. Two wonderful kids, both of them grown now, but both of them born in Springfield, raised in Springfield. We've had our careers up here. But the thing we had was, unfortunately, and this is not always not a God thing, necessarily. Sometimes He takes us through dry patches, dry times. I can tell you that I never lost my faith in Christ. Never once. Sorry. Never once considered myself a non-Christian. I can tell you though, when I first moved up here, the jobs we had, it was a you worked Saturdays, and sometimes you didn't, but we did not work Sundays. We were off on Sundays. So we always had the opportunity to go to church. But we could never find one that we liked. Now I don't, honestly, timetable wise, I don't know if 2003 forward, when the Gate Church, the church I'm at now, when they started, nonetheless, that's water under the bridge, right? But the point is we were also, my wife and I were, we also had a bit of a selfish time where our kids were small, and it was kind of difficult to find a church we were comfortable in that also had full staff nursery or daycare, right? Where we could just plug into God. And we found ourselves many times saying, well, if we're just going to watch our own kids, we can just do that at home and have church at home. That's what we would typically end up doing. So that was on my side of things, not leading. That was on me. That was my inept, godly man of the house, if you will, non-leadership, right? That was on me. That was my responsibility. I didn't do it. Again, something else I've dealt with. Something else we've pushed through forward. So during this time, basically 17 years worth, right? From 2003 till basically 2017, so that's 14 years. I would call it, I was in faith. We weren't regularly attending anywhere. We'd be in this church for a while, in that church when we tried this one, we tried that one, whatever the case was. Tried many of them. Calvary, Destiny, it was at one time the Assemblies of God, I Worship Center, both of those. There's actually a Vineyard Church in town, not far from the church we go to now. Um, but just for whatever reason, just it didn't work. And then, of course, working up here, I've had several different jobs, which, that's part of life sometimes. Um, I had um, I believe that God, I do believe this, with me not honoring Him, I was not honoring Him with our Sundays off when we first moved up here. That I believe He took away Sundays off from me. Um, biblical or not, whatever you want to interpret it, that's just what is my persuasion on that. Um, because I wasn't putting Him first. And I still loved Him. I still loved Him. But weren't necessarily putting Him absolute first, no matter what, right? And with that came several bad decisions at times. Maybe I left a job before I should have, or some of the financial concerns we've had in the past and so forth, right? All these things, because when you sow bad seed, you're going to get bad results. You're going to get you're going to get the tares instead of the wheat, right? It is what it is. So and as I was writing these notes down, we were just a spitting and a sputter. Our cars misfiring so bad, right? And it went on for a long time. There were many times when YouTube finally became a thing at that point in time, where I'd sit there just on a laptop with my earphones in and just watching different older praise songs that I knew, and just enjoying the presence of God, and just Him just washing over me. And there'd be times I'd get more turned on to God, and I'd be reading my Bible more, I'd be praying more, whatever. There's other times I wouldn't be, you know what I mean, where I was not nearly as hot, right? Um, but again, this is a stretch of time. Let's just call it 15 years for East Numbers. Um, but then, so that was the down part. But then, 2017 comes around. Several job changes. I got set free from one job, and God opened up a door, and I was working at Verizon Wireless, and was doing very well for myself. Um, had a couple little catches here and there during the job, but for a whole, did very well with myself. I was a good salesperson. Um, I don't necessarily. I sell Jesus now. I don't sell other stuff. That's what I sell. I sell you chasing after Him. That's what I sell. But during that time, I was at Verizon, and I've always loved cutting the grass. And this was in 2017. I'm mowing the yard one day, and to this day, I remember exactly where I was standing. I could see in my mind, just like I talked about with seeing the power of God on display the first time. I heard Him for the first time in a very long time speaking to me. I wasn't seeking Him. I wasn't, oh God, where are you? No, no. It was a time of quiet, but Him speaking to me could have happened to anywhere. Just happened to be in the yard. Now, whether or not that was part of His plan, I don't know. Not God. I don't need to know that. All I know is He spoke to me. And He spoke to me something very scary. He said, I'm moving you on. You're not going to be at Verizon anymore. I'm moving you to a different place. I'm like, okay. What? And that's all I had. I didn't have anything else. As I'm moving you on. So as I got done with the yard work, I came in, and my wife was upstairs, and I come upstairs. Normally I take a shower after I get done mowing. It's hot, sweaty, all this stuff. And I look at her as like, God spoke to me. And I don't make a habit of doing this. I told my wife when we first got married, even before we got married, I said, there are times when God speaks to me. I told her, I will never throw around, thus saith the Lord. If God said it, I'll tell you He said it. If it's me just wanting something to happen, I'll be transparent with it. I want this to happen. Dot, 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 whatever. And I told her, God spoke to me. He said He's moving me on. And as scary as scary as it was, this has only happened a very small handful of times in our marriage, in our relationship. And every time I've done it, every time it's come through, every single time, regardless of the subject matter, regardless of the gravity of it, every single time, she has had a perfect peace on it. She has been in complete and full agreement on it, no matter how scary it is. And that woman's got faith. When it comes to finances, that woman will scare you when it comes to finances. If she knows God said it, it's in the bank for her. It's done. There's nothing to talk about. This is a done deal. And when I told her that, she's like, all right, I'll take care of it. And that was it. There was no discussion. There was no it was like, that's it. Because she knew it in her heart, in her spirit. It bared witness with her when I shared it. I probably had a harder time saying it than she had a harder time receiving it. And that's my wife. So it was a very, very scary time. But in that, it's funny because the position he landed me in right after that was not even the position I ended up in. I left Verizon, and it was interesting because when I left Verizon, I turned in my notice. It took me a while to do that. I gave him my notice, and the lady I reported to, my store manager at the time, she was a woman of faith. And I said, it's really hard to preach revivals. I'm called to preach. Hadn't forgot that. You don't forget things like that. And I told her I'm called to preach. And I said, it's really hard to preach revivals when you're working every weekend. My next words out of my mouth were, just out of curiosity, I'm giving it 2 weeks' notice. Does this give me hire back status? She looks at me. She says, with what you just told me, do you think I would hire you back? No, you're not supposed to be here. I don't care how good a job you're doing. That's not supposed to be. You're not supposed to be here. God's moving you on. Done. God will take care of that. Okay. And she said it with a smile on her face. So, great woman of God. I don't know where she's at now, but great woman of God. I don't actually remember her name off the top of my head. I didn't report to her very long. But doing that, again, um, left that position for a position that was Monday through Friday. And that was a very short lived one. Just, it was a stepping stone position. I believe that with all my heart with that. But then going from there, I ended up in my latest position. Let me put it that way. And that again was a Monday through Friday position. Doing that, the most recent position I was in, I started that 9 months, 9 months before COVID 19 hit. I had just started that position and knew enough to be dangerous in the role I was in, and then they sent us all home. And then the next dip happens. So my youngest, I have two children, a daughter who's oldest and a son who's youngest. Daughter is now 20, going to be 22 this year, and my son is 18, going to be graduating high school this year. My son is, not saying my daughter isn't, but my son has always been in the gifted area of academics. My daughter was not and is not intelligent, very intelligent in her own right, but my son gifted, very gifted academically, scientifically, technologically, all these things. He was also he's definitely has a bend toward being social. He's not on social media per se, but he likes hanging out, or he enjoyed hanging out with his buddies. So he enjoyed school in person. And doing that, COVID 19 with the just sudden stop. My oldest really enjoyed being at home. My youngest, it hit him very hard. And we had two bouts with him on on health issues. Let's just put it that way again. Here to protect innocence. So the first round of health, he checked out by the doctor and ended up coming home, and he wasn't right. And in that, um, he well, it hit him from the neck up, and there was a mental health scare. So much that we didn't know how he tried. Um, it really jolted our world, right? And doing that, he ended up at this time. I was called back to work already, and called back to work, working from home. So he was my shadow. And we discovered that one of the things he was missing in his life, we'd found out through some phone interviews and so forth, while he was under medical care, that he had missed going to church. Fixed, done. I'm in an office setting Monday through Friday. Let's make this happen, and we did. So we started going back to church and started enjoying that. And but something just wasn't totally right. So we actually ended up several weeks later, um, when things seemed to lift up a little bit and get better, we had round two. And round two was a long 36 hours. Um, Again, protecting innocence, we ended up having to rush to the hospital, ER, spent the night there, and then they ended up taking him to another hospital nearby. And then we came home. Well, that next morning, I went to work, and work meeting at my desk. As a matter of fact, it was set up right over there. And I was working home and taking calls. My wife did not go to work that day. I just had to try to get my mind off of stuff where I could think and focus. And near the end of the day, at 4:15 p.m., I'm on the call, or I'm kind of wrapping up. No more calls for the day. At 4:15 p.m. that day, I end up just breaking down. I just I just began weeping for my son, and it put me in a spot that I was not familiar with. I'd never really, not saying I'm heartless. Of course, I'm not heartless, but I'd never experienced being put in that spot before, where I couldn't not cry. I couldn't not let it out. And my wife comes over and starts hugging me, and we're just, I'm just, it was crumbling. Well, I decided at that point, because my son's in the hospital, he's going to be there for at least a week or whatever, and I ended up calling my mom and dad just to let them know what was going on. And I knew they were fully back in church in a certain area. I didn't know where they were exactly, but I knew they were in church. And they knew at that time we weren't. We were back and forth because we were trying to find something to fit. And I called them and talked to them, and in that process, and I'm going to keep this as really as vague as I can, really, without being too whatever. Um, I'll say I had the most profound encounter with God that I've ever had, and that's really the best way I can describe it without going into details of which are unnecessary. This is the most powerful, profound, pronounced encounter and experience with Him. I mean, it hit the innermost pieces of me. Actually, this was again 2021. No, no, this was 2020. I've never been the same since. Um, that encounter with God is a direct result of what you see today. And it's not a pride statement. It's just, it is what it is. Um, from that, from that moment in that encounter, it really was an encounter. It wasn't an experience. It was an encounter. It was really both, but you get the idea. Uh, through that, Jesus brought something to my forefront. Something that I had been running from for a long time, which again, due to privacy, I'm not going to go into the detail of that. But it was something in my life that I had put in front of Him. It had the Lordship place. It was sitting where He was supposed to be sitting. And through that encounter, within days after it, He showed it to me. He's like, we need to talk about this. We need to deal with this. You need to correct or to address it. Okay. So for the next 2 weeks, as I'm working, I can't even really focus, but I am. I am doing 12 rounds with God. It's got to be done away. It's got to be done away. No, this is it. This is it. Either yield or you don't. Either yield or you don't. And finally, I got to the point, the breaking point, where, like, I've been looking for this video forever of breaking horses. How do you break horses? You take them into a deepish pond, something where they can't move, and you keep them in the water while you ride them. They can't move. It breaks their spirit, if you will, right? Causes them to yield. And that's what happened. Is He finally caused me to yield, giving Him back His rightful place and causing me to yield and submitting to Him to deal with this thing. So I dealt with that thing. It was, to date, the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. It will probably be the hardest thing I'll ever have to do. I don't know. I don't want to say that, but, I'm almost 50 now. I mean, I don't know. You never know, right? But I had to make a correction. I had to, and yeah, and we'll leave it at that. But I had to put Him back where He rightfully belonged in my heart, in my life. Doing that, once we did that, once that happened, we started going back to church on a regular basis and other churches. So what we would do is we'd be going to Destiny Church in the morning, and then my mom and my dad wanted to see me down at their church. I was like, well, yeah, let's do that. I went down with my son. He was always with me at that time. Walked in and we enjoyed it. I was like, yeah, we'll come back. And we came back. And actually, it was funny because we left that night. As we were leaving that night, one of the guys in the church, hadn't thought about this in a while, one of the guys in the church follows us, chases us, if you will, out the door. Chasing us, meaning trying to catch up with us. And he said, hey! I was like, yeah? I heard you know how to run that soundboard back there. I'm like, who told you that? It's like, I don't know, somebody just told me he did. What's funny is, later on I found out nobody had actually told him. My dad wouldn't lie, my mom didn't lie. Nobody really knew me in that church. I had not been in the area in over 15 years, 16 years, not in the church world, right? So there's no way this guy would have known that I knew any experience on running a soundboard. My days of New Hope, that was one of the things that I learned to do there in the practical world, in the serving world, ministry wise, is learning to run the physical soundboard, how to run, how to mix it, how to bring things up and bring things down, and so forth. Right? Um, I don't know this. It's taking me forever to learn this stuff. And some would say I'm still learning. I would say I'm still learning. But it's the ear and knowing what to press up, what the knobs do, all these things, right? And I was like, well, maybe. And I go home, and one thing leads to another very quickly, and now we are coming down to help with some of the sound because they don't have a soundboard person, they don't have a sound technician. Small church, but it was still a lot of fun. Christmas rolls around, so that was about November. Christmas rolls around, and we have Christmas at my mom and dad's house, and I'm not trying to get into too finer details, but just this does fit into everything because we end up all of us go to this church after Christmas time service because Christmas was for us was celebrated that year on Sunday, so we go up there. Um, we go up to that church on that Sunday night. We all decided to sing a song. And next thing we know, we got a praise team built. Doing, my son's back there running the mixing board. I'm up there helping lead worship with my mom and my sister and so forth. And it was just a great time. And again, from a leadership point of view, from serving in leadership and yielding and listening and all these things, um, God set me free in a lot of things of ministry in that aspect. And I'm very thankful. It was a New Life Church there in Whitehall, pastors Paul and Alberta Elliott. Two great people of God, two great pastors of God. Um, I still give you guys credit. I still am sorry for the way everything ended with there, but I'm still very, very thankful for the opportunity to serve in whatever way we served. So if you're listening to this, just know that. Um, that being said, we went from there, whether rightfully or not, we'll just move that forward. We went from there and we started kind of bouncing around churches, finding a place to hopefully fit back in. Ended up circling back around to what is now Lighthouse, which used to be New Hope, the first church. And during that time, I thought that the pastor ended up resigning there. Nothing wrong. He just served 8 years, like it's time to do something else. And he thought I was going to end up taking that over in the month and a half I was actually there. But in that time, it was actually God speaking to me. It's like, no, this place is done. This place is done for you. Okay. So I ended up going to Jerseyville and spending some time down there. In all that, I'm getting a little ahead of myself there, forgive me. In all of this, during the church progression time, I'm not gonna say church hopping, because it wasn't that I was taking problems with me. It wasn't that at all. It wasn't I was trying to take over any church. It wasn't any of that. It was just the fact of where does God want me to be? I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out in a very humble, submissive way. During this time, as I said, I had to deal with this monumental thing. I put Jesus back on the throne of my life. Doing that, he blessed me and he showed me the tent of meeting IL. I was at work one day and he just started speaking to me. I couldn't write down fast enough what he showed me. And, well, the rest is history on that. That's when I was born. That was how I was born. It was born out of submission of what he required in my life. When I was willing to yield to it and willing to submit to it, that's when he birthed a wondrous blessing. But he didn't show me that. He said, you obey first. You submit first. With not knowing anything on the other side of that. You submit first to who I am. Once we deal with that, fully deal with it, it'll unlock some doors. I didn't know about the doors being unlocked. It wasn't about that. Just deal with what's in front of you. And that's where that was. And this concludes that. We'll pick up with Jerseyville and to today after these short messages, otherwise known as tomorrow morning. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I pray it's been a blessing to you, and we'll be back to wrap this up.